More than 1 year after Hurricane Harvey, and recovery is still ongoing. Today, the Land and Resource Management Committee held a public forum to get updates from communities around the coastal bend. Our Stephen Cavazos shows us what many are still doing to move forward.
The coastal bend is working to rebuild after Hurricane Harvey left communities devastated and lives changed forever.
13 months out, we have basically been forgotten and overlooked. Our people are suffering.
Port Aransas Mayor Charles Bouillon disappointed at the lack of federal funding, with citywide damage estimating over $500 million.
Compare those numbers against the fact that you've only received approximately maybe $113,000 for reconstruction, you can see the problem.
And it's concerns like Bouillon's the Texas General Land Committee wants to know about.
Progress, is being made. We are a resilient community, but obviously we want to make sure that we stay on the forefront of people's minds, especially those across the state.
And although areas like Port Aransas have come a long way, recovery is not over. Many now voicing their opposition to a rate increase proposed by the Texas Windstorm Association.
Anytime that there's a proposed increase of any kind, especially during a recovery process such as Hurricane Harvey in this case, is detrimental to the recovery efforts of our communities.
Communities like Fulton, where the citizens remain a priority for Mayor Jimmy Kendrick.
We battle every day to make it. We pull up our bootstraps and try to be what we can and be productive.
Kendrick worried that a possible increase in winsurance would have a negative impact on the economy.
If you have to pay more insurance to keep moving to the coast, we won't have people moving here. We won't have companies coming here. We won't have hotels opening up down here.
And for Kendrick, being a part of the recovery means becoming more actively involved with the people.
If you're going to do the job, do the job. Do the job. And the job is to come be part of our community and find out what we need.
Stephen Cavazos, 3 News.
Well, now